All right, here we go. It is, I got Clayton with me. I got JMart with me. This is by far the best slate of college football. So we're just going to get right into it. We're going to figure out what the heck's going on with some of these teams. But let's start with the best game on the board. Might be the best game of the year. JMart, I know you go to Georgia. I know you're going to root for Georgia. So I'm going to frame it to you like this. It's Georgia at Alabama, basically a pick 'em game. Georgia's 1 or 2 point favorites, depending where you look. I want you to go from the other side. Tell me how Alabama can win this game, and let's just kind of educate people on what type of team Alabama is this year, what type of team Georgia is. Last time we saw Georgia, they barely beat Kentucky, and Alabama hasn't faced anybody. So go ahead.
Yeah, so when you look at Alabama offensively, Jalen Milroe is the engine, and if someone were to argue he basically is the entire offense, I wouldn't look at them any different because I feel the same way. And the issue for Georgia is that they have notoriously struggled at stopping dual threat quarterbacks, especially Milroe. Milroe killed them in the SEC championship game last year. And the key to Georgia will be stopping Jalen Milroe early in the game to try and slow down the momentum that Bama will be feeling coming into the game based off of Georgia's performance against Kentucky, based off it being a home game. It's really critical that Georgia can come out and get a couple stops early and try and change the momentum in Tuscaloosa for the
Does,
game.
does Alabama, who do they have a best player on offense? Is a tight end, a receiver, running back? Where are they going on 3rd and 4? That's my favorite question. 3rd and 4, where's the ball going?
3rd and 4, truthfully, I think it's kind of give the ball to Jalen Milroe and let him kind of, is he going to pass or is he just going to scramble and figure it out himself? He's such a good improviser. His decision making is still a little questionable, but he's got a lot better from last year. I think you just give him the ball and just say, if the pass is there, take it. If it's not there, we trust your ability to get that 4-yard scramble.
And then where does Georgia counter that? Like their linebackers, do they have a spy? Who's the best? They got great corner, right? Malachi in the
Yeah,
second. But tell me how they get a game plan. He's had 2 weeks for it, so they got to do something, right?
Georgia's looked really strong in the secondary, specifically with the safeties. KJ Bolden's been a true freshman, but he's fit right into the offense or the defense incredibly well. It's going to be their key will be stopping Alabama from beating them over top and trusting the linebackers they have to kind of at the least contain Milroe. It's a similar group from last year, so they're going to have to come with a little bit of a different look to try and prevent that. Dan Campbell was the guy spying him in the SEC championship game last year. It didn't really work too well. They're going to need to come with a different option there.
And their offensive line, if I remember from that SEC championship game, they blew Georgia off they blew them off the line the whole game. Clayton, build on that. What are you probably don't care either way who wins this game. So do you think Alabama will be successful moving the football against Georgia? How do you see it playing out when Alabama has the ball?
Yeah, I mean, based on based on how they've been so far, the passing offense specifically has been super high powered. But like Jack's saying, Georgia very strong in the pass defense realm. But I think both offenses have the skills to keep up with each other. I think it'll just be who can do more, kind of. Georgia looked pretty one dimensional against Kentucky, so I think part of that was maybe them not trying to do too much, knowing that this bigger game was coming up. But I think they'll have to do a lot more on the offensive side of the ball.
How are they going to attack? Yeah, Jack. His real name's Jack, but JMart, since we have other Jack. But yeah, JMart gave us how he thinks Alabama pretty much everything revolves around Milroe. What's it like for Georgia's offense? They were explosive against Clemson in the second half. Where are they going on 3rd and 4? Do they have a best player? Because it felt like when we talked about Georgia earlier in the year, they were still trying to figure out who their best players are, right?
Yeah, definitely. Or sorry, was this?
Yeah, go ahead. No, Clayton, go ahead.
Yeah, I think they struggled a lot, just moving the ball in general, passing and running against Kentucky. I think maybe they should try and pass it a bit more. Kentucky was shutting down the run game pretty well, so I think they'll have to air it out. I'm not as familiar with Georgia's roster, but regardless, they have talent every year. They reload, they don't rebuild. So
talk to me, JMart. Bias again, keep it out for me. But in all seriousness, how is Georgia going to move against Alabama? Do they match up well? Do their skill players match up against Alabama's defense?
They are so dynamic offensively. They have guys like Arian Smith and London Humphreys that are both incredibly fast receivers that are game breakers when used correctly. The issue is going to be using them correctly. I've watched Mike Bobo, the offensive coordinator for Georgia, for a couple years now. He's been back for 2. he has a tendency to spend too much time trying to feel out the opposing defense and not leaving himself with enough time to actually implement the stuff that he has seen from the little screen passes and draws and RPOs. I'm expecting him to try and open the game plan up earlier this game, because what lost them the SEC championship game was they spent a half running screen passes, not really looking for that deep threat. They have the guys this year to beat Alabama over the top. They need to start looking for that earlier. They can't save the game plan. This needs to be like the national championship for Georgia. They can't just try and go with a limited game plan to try and save stuff for Texas and Ole Miss. They need to just open the system up. And if they get stopped, they get stopped. They can tweak it. And I think they're going to have to change up the game plan for later games, but it needs to be full playbook. Let Carson Beck do his thing. The run games looked a little weak early. You're going to have to open the passing game up to let the run game kind of open itself up.
Yeah, I mean, Clayton made a good point. Maybe they didn't open up things against Kentucky because they figured they could just be vanilla and win the game. So, all right, give me the prediction on it. We've talked about it. JMart, you go first. You're going to take Georgia, but how are they going to win the game? What would be the final? What are we in the 30s? Clayton made it sound like he thinks both offenses are going to go back and forth. How do you say it?
I can see a 31-28 outcome being very likely. Georgia hasn't allowed a touchdown yet. I expect Bama to have scored a touchdown before halftime. I'm expecting it to be a pretty high-scoring game. There will be some adjustments made at the half that will probably either slow both offenses down or just fully ignite them into a second gear. But I'm expecting 31-28. It will be within a touchdown.
I know you're excited. We're going to get to the next game. I know the funny thing is you're excited about the game. It's going to be a big game, but because I'm not a fan and it's just looking at it from the NIL and the playoffs and all that jazz, it's like both teams are going to the playoffs. It's the one aspect of the expansion that sucks is these kinds of games. Like I still remember it was Alabama LSU like 9-6, 10, 15 years ago, whatever it was. And it was like the biggest game ever. LSU, actually that year LSU won and then Alabama beat them in the championship. But anyway, both teams are going to head to the playoffs. It'll still be fun. Seeding matters. Getting the top 4 seeds is certainly a big deal. So, all right, Clayton, final score. You got Alabama pulling it out or you got Georgia winning?
Yeah, like JMart said, I think it'll be within a touchdown regardless, but I do have Alabama winning it just based on what I've seen from their offense compared to Georgia's. Plus, they're at home. This is Georgia's first time playing in Bryant-Denny besides 2020, which doesn't really count because there weren't a lot of fans there since 2007. So it's been a while since they've played there. I think that'll definitely add to the challenge.
All right, last one on Alabama. Actually, you know what? Let's the thing about from a gambling standpoint, maybe I should say it like this, Clayton. If I told you that the game was a blowout, one way or the other, if it wasn't going to be close, is it more likely that Alabama? Who's got a better chance to win the game by 17 points?
That's difficult once again with them being at home, but I would honestly not be surprised if Georgia was on that side of it, just because I'm more confident in Georgia's defense. So if Georgia's defense can control the explosive passing offense of Alabama early, I think they've got enough on the offensive end to where they could win that game. But if that was the case, I think it would definitely be on the lower scoring side.
Yeah, like a 23-6 kind of just Alabama can't get moving. All right, let's go to Ole Miss, Kentucky. That's the biggest. I guess it's a lot of early games, a lot of big games going on, a lot of action. So we're gonna figure out how we can find an edge. JMart, why don't I start with you? We spent a lot of time on Kentucky, just because they played South Carolina in a really game that went the wrong way. Then they almost beat Georgia. Ole Miss, everybody's raving. Are you going to zag on Ole Miss? Or is this a spot? I think they're 17.5-point favorites. They win by 30 today. What's the case here with Ole Miss?
This is one of those games where you can look at a live bet and maybe be able to snipe a good spread, because you'll be able to tell with Kentucky if they're going to be in this game after probably the first 2 drives. If they can't get anything going early and Ole Miss just goes down and scores twice, they're going to lose this game by 30 points. But if they are able to stay in the game through the first quarter, like they did against Georgia, build that momentum up, they're such a big momentum team. If they can keep the momentum early, they're going to be able to stay in this game, and it'll be they could beat Ole Miss. They have the talent to do it, especially on defense.
Appreciate that. My dog is snoring. I don't know if anybody can hear it, but he's distracting me halfway through. I'm listening to everything you're saying, so I have to wake him up so he doesn't keep doing this to me. Clayton, build on that Ole Miss, Kentucky. If I told you it was a 3-point game or a 31-point game, which way are you leaning?
Probably more in the 31-point game, just because I'm, what we've seen from UK against South Carolina. South Carolina doesn't have a super high-powered offense. I think they definitely opened it up more, did I guess a lot more intricate things than Georgia did. But this is a game I'm just not really convinced on either team yet. I think UK is the most confusing team in college football right now, just based on their results. We know they have talent, but they've also lost to teams that you would think are less talented than them. And then Ole Miss, they haven't played an SEC opponent yet. Their offenses looked great, but until they play a high-powered defense, I'm just not totally sold on them. But I do think Ole Miss will pull it out. They have the talent. Killed it in the transfer portal this year. Great coaching. So they've got all the ingredients to win it.
And the numbers making you think Ole Miss will blow them out just because it's like, hey, if Kentucky played that close to Georgia, they should. So, I'm honest about this. Like right now, there's so much on my plate. College football betting is not for me. I just try to find a way to bet against Colorado. Glad I didn't do it last week because what's his face? Jack convinced me that Baylor, his coach, doesn't know what he's doing, which apparently he doesn't. And rushed 5 guys at the end of the game. But anyway, all right, we got K-State, Oak State, JMart. How good is Kansas State? They're kind of like, you told me Avery Johnson was right in the quarterback.
Yeah, no, I thought he was good, and Clayton texted me while the game was going on. It was like, you cursed them because he looked terrible, and he objectively was terrible passing the ball. The run game was there still a little bit, but look, these are two teams in legitimate limbo after 2 really bad losses. There's no world where Oklahoma State should play the way they did against Utah. It was just an offensive failure by them in every aspect. So this is one of those games where you lean towards the home team because they're both reeling. They're both in a similar situation. And I think you just trust the home team a little more, but it's a game. It could go legitimately anyway.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I knew it's funny because you had a really good week last week, and then the Avery Johnson was like the last piece of anything you're getting wrong for the rest of the year. You'll be right about everything. But Clayton, tell me why Oklahoma State sucked last week, because I thought they were supposed to be competitive against Utah. Utah was all banged up. They were home. So you have a feeling on Oklahoma State? Did you have a feeling before the season? Has it changed? What's your read on them?
Well, I think before the season, the big highlight of Oklahoma State was Ollie Gordon being the best running back in the country, and that just certainly hasn't been the case this year. And then obviously last game they had huge passing struggles. Quarterback Alan Bowman had to be benched. So it's kind of two teams that had similar struggles, big offensive struggles from guys that you wouldn't expect them to have. But looking at the game, I think Kansas State's a bit more versatile, just with a more versatile quarterback and a less run-focused offense. When you think of Oklahoma State, you think they're going to be running the ball. So
I don't like betting on Mike Gundy in general. Yeah, he took out the quarterback, swapped him. Looked like it was a knee-jerk reaction, because then when he brought him back in, he almost brought him back and won the game. So, Big 12 football. So Arkansas, Texas A&M, that's the next game that's on my radar here, because trying to figure out who's good at football, and it doesn't seem like Auburn's that great. Because Arkansas beat them, but I watched a lot of it. I watched enough of it to be like, Auburn just is like, I don't know what they're doing. So Arkansas, they're at Texas A&M. A&M, on the other hand, beat the crap out of Florida. They've looked great ever since they looked terrible against Notre Dame. People just wanted to give up on A&M. Now, what are we looking at? It's only a 4-point number. It feels like more money will end up going on A&M. Just because but what's the read on Arkansas, JMart? Like, I know you're tapped into the SEC, so what do you think?
So their head coach is the former offensive line coach at Georgia, Sam Pittman. And if there's one thing he's good at, it's getting guys in the trenches and getting them to produce. And I believe that reads similarly to how Notre Dame plays football. And so this is a team that is schematically pretty similar to Notre Dame. It could cause A&M some troubles having to deal with that once again. The quarterback looked shaky when he got rattled a little bit for Texas A&M. I can see something like that possibly happening again. But again, it comes down to what that first quarter looks like. It comes down to if A&M can keep him secure in the pocket and let him build some confidence. He seems like a big confidence guy, so I'm going to need A&M to keep him safe for me to really feel like A&M can cruise through this game.
Clayton, what's your read? We know it's a tough place to play. You ever been to A&M?
I have not, but this is a neutral site game, correct? I think they do this one at.
That's why you're here. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do this one at Cowboys Stadium, which
You're in Dallas.
Yeah.
That's why. Okay, so I was wondering why I was only. You know what? Excuse me. There you go. So I get the big bucks. So they're only a 4-point favorite. Probably be what, like a 7-8 point favorite if it was in A&M. Is that fair to say?
I assume so. Yeah. I mean, they're kind of. I don't know. I haven't been convinced by what they've done this season. They beat Florida convincingly enough. Wasn't by a huge point differential, but they struggled. I think they struggled with Bowling Green. They just haven't shown me that they defensively, especially, can really hold up people that well. And I think Arkansas, like Jack was saying, they do a lot in the trenches. They have a good running offense. I think their offense has benefited a lot from Bobby Petrino coming in at OC. But they're just going to have to finish games. I think they really should have won that one against Oklahoma State earlier in the year, and they just weren't able to finish. But I could definitely see Arkansas coming in and winning this one. They're better than I think most people are giving them credit for.
Okay, so then talk to me. That goes to our next game. Talk about two teams that are reeling: Oklahoma and Auburn. Start with Auburn, Clayton. So Arkansas beats. While we're finishing up there on Arkansas. Am I right? Like, is Auburn that bad, or are you giving Arkansas more of the credit last week?
I do think Auburn is pretty just not great this year. They had the quarterback change. We thought it would go good. It didn't seem to help that much. I'm not sure if they're starting Peyton Thorne again this week, but I'm really not convinced on Auburn. I'm not sure if that's a home game for them or if it's at Oklahoma, but regardless of that fact, I think Oklahoma should win by at least a touchdown.
Yeah, I believe the game's in Norman, right, JMart?
I think it is. I'm pretty sure.
What do you got there? Is Tennessee? I kind of wanted to talk about Oklahoma in the context of Tennessee. Can you recap that game from us last week and what was the takeaway more so from the Oklahoma side, though?
I mean, objectively, the read going in was Tennessee will be too fast for Oklahoma, and they were too fast for Oklahoma. And the way Tennessee was talking after the game, they seemed to think they didn't even open the playbook up. They were able to run a shortened offense and still handle business against Oklahoma. So there is a world where Oklahoma just isn't that good of a team. I feel like they overreacted a little bit by switching the quarterbacks out after a loss against such a good team. It doesn't feel like the way you build trust in your quarterback play.
And hold on, let me catch myself real quick because I think it changes the whole analysis of the game because it's actually at Auburn. So I apologize for that because I was like looking at it. The spread's only 2. So I was like, all right, it must be at Auburn. So kind of lines makers are agreeing with you. Maybe Oklahoma's just overrated because if it's a 2-point, basically, Auburn's a really not a great team. So what does that say about Oklahoma, right?
I mean, I'm looking at it, and Hugh Freeze is one of the last coaches I'd want if my program feels like it's reeling. He is not a stable personality. He is erratic in his own behavior and an erratic coach. So I don't, this is a game where I feels like who's going to lose less, who's going to come in and just not lose as bad as the other team is, because I don't think either program is heading in a good direction. And
yeah, usually on the professional level, when you get embarrassed, NBA, baseball, NFL, you just get your ass kicked. It's usually a good bet on that team the following week because they are good enough to just fix it. But if Oklahoma's not good enough to fix it, and then they get down, a few points to Auburn on the road, it gets loud. And, it feels like a stay-away game unless you have a strong opinion on Auburn. But I don't know how you take Oklahoma. I mean, feels like Tennessee could have scored 50 points if the coach didn't go to Oklahoma. It looked like he took his foot off the gas. All right, how good's Texas? Arch Manning. Mississippi State's terrible. By the way, I got a funny quick story. So listen to the talk radio down here in Georgia. When I first got down here, I would listen to it every day. I don't love it, but there's one show in the morning that's just okay. And he absolutely ripped Mississippi State as like the worst place in the world to like go to a game and just like the worst university. I always think about that every time Mississippi State pops up, and they're getting 1 million points. They're at Texas. Mississippi State's never good. It feels like they can't get their act together. What's the deal here? Do we just take Arch? I mean, Arch wants to put up 50 points, right?
Yeah, I think you just take Texas. Like, I don't know what the direction is for Mississippi State, and Texas just looks so composed. Arch he had a weird week last week, but I think he'll be more composed in this game. He has another week of experience under him. I expect him to adapt quickly, and I don't really see much that Mississippi State has for me to think that they can even stay in the game.
Clayton, can you make an argument that Mississippi State's actually secretly underrated and they're flying under the radar and this could be a tight game?
Absolutely not. The game last week against Toledo. Toledo is a stronger Group of 5 opponent, but that's just a total embarrassment, losing. I think it was 41-17. Mississippi State's also on their backup quarterback. They just don't seem to have a real identity. Looking at the line of the game, it's still hard to predict just because Texas is favored by so much. But
right.
I think
it's 37, 38 points. A lot of these guys. By the way, just not to preach to anybody, but if you are betting, just as a reminder, in case you haven't been bombarded with the 3 million commercials that they show about all the different ways you can bet, all the different apps, shop your lines. It's really important, especially college football. You get a lot of variance. There's a lot of, especially on the big numbers, it could be a 2-point difference in certain books. So keep that in mind. Excuse me. All right. Yeah. So Mississippi State, we don't like. Stanford, Clemson. That's it. I wanted to talk about that game because Stanford surprised us last week. I was pretty high on Syracuse. I like Syracuse. Got to watch them a couple times. I like the quarterback, McCord. Stanford beats them. This is less a Stanford conversation, more of a Clemson, because how good is Clemson? JMart, I want your thoughts on it because they've played Georgia even just for a half. So they've only had one bad half of football. Besides that, they look like the best team in college football. Where are we at? Are they – I know they're somewhere in between the first half of Georgia and what they've looked like. What do you think of this game? They're favored 21.5 points, late game, tough environment, across the country. What do you think?
I think they're a team that, simply put, if they have a good first quarter, they're going to have a good full game. If you can stop them, if you can get them on the back foot, they don't look very good when they're trailing in games, and they have been really, really effective at just making it a 2-touchdown lead in like 5 minutes. And once you're down 2 touchdowns in 5 minutes, it's really hard to get, especially a group of teenagers, to kind of come together and be like, we can get back into this game. It feels so demoralizing. And truthfully, I think that they're going to probably be able to do that against Stanford. They're just going to quick drive, quick stop, quick drive.
Yeah, it's almost like getting embarrassed in that second half of Georgia, like flip the switch. Now Clemson sucks. Dabo's been able to rally the troops. Who do I want to watch on Clemson's offense, Clayton? Do you know anybody? Is there somebody that pops out in particular if we're going to watch the game tonight?
On the offensive side, I think Cade Klubnik, the quarterback, has surprised me with his play this year. Obviously, looking at the first game and just the beginning of the year outlook on Clemson was, is their offense going to be able to play up to par? And after the first game, we weren't thinking that, but now they've looked very explosive. Cade Klubnik's moving the ball really effectively through the air. They've had historically known to have a good run game. So I'm very pleased with their offense just in general. Already was convinced on the defense. So as a South Carolina fan, it's a little worrying seeing Clemson starting to pick things up. But, yeah, I'm definitely convinced on them as a team.
So what about – we can go through – there's a couple Big Ten late games. You guys have thoughts? JMart, Illinois, Penn State. I know it feels like that's another country for you guys, but they do play football north of the border. North of the Mason-Dixon. All right, let me shut up. Illinois, Penn State. Got any thoughts on that?
So my dad went to Illinois, so I'm a big Illinois football guy. I stay tuned in pretty much every season.
Perfect.
The thing about Illinois is they have been playing everyone really well. They're keeping themselves in the games against every opponent, and they've been able to beat Penn State in recent history. They were the ones that I think had like a 7 overtime game, and they were able to come out on top unranked against a highly ranked Penn State team. It was during COVID, but nonetheless, they've shown that they can hang with
and they beat Nebraska. Yeah, they're on their feet. They beat Nebraska last week, right?
And that's another thing is they still haven't lost a game. So they are a team that has shown an ability to not only beat good teams, but beat them on the road. And I think when you look at Penn State, if Illinois stops the run game, it does ask some questions of Penn State that they're going to have to adjust the offense and try and figure it out a little more.
Clayton, do you have any thoughts on Penn State, and in particular, how's their quarterback look? Drew Aller?
Drew Aller. I mean, he definitely looks better than years past. I'm definitely more convinced on their offense this year. If you look at their results, I think they also kept it really close with Bowling Green. I don't know if that talks about Bowling Green or the teams they played, but they're moving the ball a lot better through the air this year. So they kind of have a more two-dimensional offense, I would say.
I was impressed. I'm sorry. Finish your thoughts. Sorry.
Yeah, but also on the topic of Illinois, they've looked really impressive. 2 pretty impressive wins. Nebraska, Kansas now doesn't look as impressive, but Nebraska was a team I was really sold on. So particularly on Illinois' defense, being able to contain Dylan Raiola in that offense, I was very pleased with that.
My initial analysis of it was I actually would like Penn State more if they were on the road, because I feel like Illinois has got nothing to lose. They're 4-0. Not that it's like they playing with house money, beating Nebraska in a hostile environment. I don't think the environment will kill them. And Penn State, their best game was at West Virginia, and then ever since they haven't covered. So interesting to watch. I know you guys probably won't see any of it as Georgia faces Alabama at the same time. Not great scheduling there. I guess they didn't think Illinois was going to be great, so the Big Ten had that scheduled as their game to go up against Georgia and Alabama. So that'll take – is there anything else today, any just random player, random game, Clayton, that we didn't go over that you think talking about for a few minutes would help?
One I was looking at was Washington State versus Boise State. I think has huge shootout potential, so I think that could be really fun just because it's 2 super high-powered offenses. Obviously, you got Ashton Genie, Heisman contender running back at Boise State, and then Washington State quarterback John Mateer, I think is how you say it. He looked really impressive throwing the ball and on the ground. So it's 2 really solid offenses against 2 not so great defenses. I think could just end up in a really fun shootout type of game.
What about you, JMart? Anything else before 7:30?
That was the game I came in with too. It was like I've really enjoyed watching Boise State. They're just legitimately, they might be the most fun team in college football to watch, and they're
right, so
fun to watch them.
All right, so here's a good one then. Last college football question: who is, if I made you pick right now, who's the non-Power 4 school that makes it into the playoffs? Who wants to go first? Either one.
I'm gonna need a minute. I'm definitely it's wide open right now.
Yeah.
Who are like the contenders then? Give me like a couple that you would narrow it down to. Is it because Memphis they lost to Florida State, right? So that kind of hurt them. It's early, but
they beat Florida State. They
lost to Navy, I think it was.
Okay, so that's a bad loss. But if they end up winning the conference, having that Florida State. All right, great. So I put you on the spot. We'll do that next week. Let's go. I'll get you guys out of here because I'm already 5 minutes late. But I want to do one more thing on just for an NFL take, since I won't talk to you guys until next week. Give me something for the NFL that we're going to be a little bit surprised about. Just something, or you're just looking forward to. Clayton, you got anything?
Not that I'm claiming will happen. I'm really just excited to see the Vikings-Packers game. The Vikings have been really surprising this year. I guess we'll see if Sam Darnold continues to be consistent. He's in the MVP race right now, which we didn't expect. So
if I told you before the season,
I'm really intrigued by them.
Yeah, before the season, week 4, the thing you're looking forward to the most is Sam Darnold versus Malik Willis. It's funny how things play out. The Commanders are now the best offense in the history of football. So that's why I feel like you can judge people's opinions on sports early in the season, because the people that aren't – I'm glad you guys didn't just give me a team when I look back on it, because it's like you could give me a team. You'd just be guessing. It's hard to have hot takes in football a month, 2 months into it. Like so much the matchups really dictate anything. I don't even like looking at statistics, like team statistics for the first month or two, because it just feels like it's irrelevant. Anyway, JMart, what do you got? Something on your mind here for? Don't tell me it was Packers Vikings.
No. I'm just gonna go chalk with Sunday Night Football, Bills Ravens. Like I think that it's gonna hopefully be the most entertaining game of the season so far. I think you're looking at 2 teams that have played entirely different styles of offense. You expected the Bills to come in this season running the ball aggressively. They've looked really good in the passing game, and the Ravens have looked basically unstoppable in the run game. So I'm expecting to see two really good coaches try to figure each other out, and it hopefully should be a decently high scoring game that with some big plays, some highlights and stuff like that. I just love watching Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, to be honest.
Yeah, it should be fantastic. Last time Buffalo, we have not been able to clip them, so hopefully we get it done. It should be a great game. All right, well, enjoy the day. Any bets, we'll have them out. Okay. Oh yeah. Last thing before we go, can I bet UCF against Colorado? Jack told me not to last week.
Colorado's rolling right now. I have a hard time. I think Colorado could. They're a momentum team too.
UCF's 3-0.
And they have I like their quarterback. He's a funny guy, but Colorado's been dangerous recently. You can't let them get some momentum behind them. They could beat a lot of really good teams.
And they're the underdog. I don't like when Colorado's the underdog. That makes me feel like scared of them. All right.
Yes,
they're a pretty big underdog too, which I'm a little surprised by, but.
All right, fine. I won't bet on it. Just root against them. I root against that program and don't like what they're doing over there. So, all right, everybody enjoy the day. And, I will see you guys next week. Appreciate it. And, all right, good luck, everybody.
All right, see you.
All right.